it is time for us to check in. I wish we had like a little, when Mr. Rogers would go to the land of make believe, he'd have like a little sound that would ring before I think the train came. Well, let's just imagine that sound, and we will check in on the progression of the Dave Rubin project, wherein you take a guy who goes from being a sort of like a milquetoast liberal-y guy who was a big supporter of Israel, and all that sometimes comes with that, with like a little skepticism of brown people in the Middle East, who then follows a trajectory where he starts to sort of use his platform as he goes off on his own to platform right-wingers and violently right-wingers, and does it under the auspices of a new atheism, if you will, where he's skeptical of religion and becomes part of what is known as the IDW, which was like a home for liberals who had to get away from the mean leftists. And then he started getting libertarian funded, because that's more or less the same thing. And then he lost his libertarian funding and was like, how can I grow? I know I will join Glenn Beck. And then lost his IDW status and moved to the right, very much in the way that I predicted, and slowly began to shed some of those liberal policies. I'm for a ban on abortion now and this and that. But where do you go? What do you do if you have this dilemma? I am married to a man and working for another man who really disdains that type of assault on traditional marriage. Where will you go? Well, you'll take a step maybe towards reaching out to religious fundamentalism, which incidentally would say that your marriage.
I thought you were going to say a step towards divorce, but
Well, maybe that follows. Which incidentally, those fundamentalists would say that your religion, your marriage is an abomination. But here I give you the next installment of Dave Rubin's evolution.
And I would point this at myself too, and I'm really trying to work through this personally, is that Jews sort of traded in everything after the Holocaust for assimilation, for many, many good reasons. Many good reasons. I mean, we have a brutal history. It ain't pretty. And by many estimations, we shouldn't even be here at this point. But something kept us here. Something kept us here. But then it sort of got traded in for like what I would say is like the Seinfeldization of America, that it wasn't really that you believed in. And by the way, I love Seinfeld. I think it's the greatest sitcom ever written. And I'm rewatching Curb Your Enthusiasm right now. But that sort of thing, that sort of, oh, it's just this cultural thing that has something to do with a sense of humor, but really doesn't have anything to do with belief per se or tradition, really. It's just this, I eat bagels, I kind of something, I know something about the Upper West Side of Manhattan or something like that. It doesn't work. And I think a lot of liberal Jews are finally hitting that position. And I suspect you guys are probably going to find that your group is going to grow and grow and grow right now, because people are going to realize, hey, maybe I did make some mistakes along the way.
You know what amazes me? Because I mean, we'll get to the part where Dave is clearly transitioning. But what is amazing to me is this guy gets out there and literally just must wake up in the morning and go like, what am I struggling with? What do I need to do to pivot? I'm going to use my own questions about myself as a substitute for any type of assessment about what's going on in the world around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I got some bad news for Dave about this Seinfeldization that he perceives. There is something called the Jewish emancipation, which took place in Europe in the 1800s, where one place was Germany, for instance, where Jews could become citizens of the country in which they lived. The Reform Judaism that I suspect that Dave Rubin practices was born out of that. In fact, the layout of the synagogue, of the shul, where Jews pray for reforms, changed to reflect more like the Protestants. If you go into an Orthodox Jewish temple, the podium, the bima, is in the middle of the room, and it's facing the Torah ark, and everybody faces the Torah. So there's some people who don't even see the rabbi. The rabbi's behind them. In a Reform Jewish temple, and this is also the case with conservative and Reconstructionists, it's more like church. The rabbi is up on a stage in front of the entire congregation. All of what he's talking about has been around for over 150 years. And it's not just an American phenomenon, since there was a sitcom that he liked where Jews decided they're not going to be that religious. And the odd thing is, it's not just Jews. We know that Christians are going to church far less over the past 20, 25 years than they were. So whatever's going on in Dave's mind has nothing to do with what he thinks it does. It is not the explanation for everything he sees. Just because he likes Seinfeld does not explain that Jews are not as religious as they were, and as if, in some level, that ties into anything else. Really, really religious Jews don't believe there should be an Israel, because it shouldn't be created until the Messiah returns. But in Dave Rubin's pea-sized brain, all of this is coming together, and he's convinced it's a movement that's happening. Just like when all the people were leaving the Democratic Party 2.5 years ago, when he was on that kick, there's a movement happening. I could tell, I could feel it. And really what it was is just that Glenn Beck was saying, like, hey, maybe you might want to come work for us.
So, what I think this is, it could really tie into your introduction about, Dave Rubin's transition to this, from essentially being a bland liberal who was in favor of Israel, who left TYT, left the left because he disagreed with the atheism and wanted to be a more Sam Harris type, essentially, right? He got his launch pad by being an atheist. Now he's saying he believes religion is the underpinning to society. Maybe he went away from Judaism for a long time and he kind of just forgot what it was. So he decided he was going to watch When Harry Met Sally, Seinfeld. I mean, that's the Upper West Side comment. It was like, right. He's like, I'm so brainwashed and I'm so stupid that I forgot everything about what Judaism is. And so I'm like, I've got to experience it through the lens of cinema and television. And so this is now kind of what's replaced.
Well, look,
his idea of Judaism in his brain. And you can't hold him to the standard of like a sentient being, because he's really just taking in this information via television and thinking it's reality.
But I mean, I would disagree only insofar as like he's moving in a trajectory. And that indicates that there's something happening in his head. I don't know that he's planning it out. Now, just like I successfully predicted that he would change his stance on abortion, I am now making another prediction that he will find religion, become more religious as a way of ingratiating himself with Ben Shapiro, and also appeasing Glenn Beck, who is a fundamentalist nut himself. And at one point, we could be a couple of years off, he will, or at the very least, claim to be divorced. And will even probably at one point, I would say probably within 4, 5, 6 years, maybe, be talking about his wife who lives in Canada or France or something like that. That would be that's the trajectory. I'm calling it here. And he's going to do it through fundamental Judaism. Well, that is it. He's going to be baking his own challah soon on the show. and he's going to let that beard grow out, and that's it. Boom, done.
Him and Milo Yiannopoulos can team up, right? They're gonna team up and do like a Netflix, not Netflix, but some sort of docu series where they travel the country and they pray the gay away, and they try to find wives, and in the end they end up together.
Oh my God, I would. Can I buy the rights to that? That is a hit. Forget about it.
And they pray, and it's also like there's like tension because Milo Yiannopoulos, I would imagine he's a Christian, right? And Dave's Jewish, and so they're trying to do it in two different ways, praying the gay away, but eventually, it ends up coming back together. It brings them together.
I don't have my mom sound, darn it.